And welcome back. In this chapter and in the next, we're going to put it all together. We're going to take all of our learnings up until this point in the course, and we're going to build two tools from scratch that we can use immediately in our business or entrepreneurial lives. In this chapter, we're going to build a 5-year financial model. Now, that's the document that commonly gets included in investor pitches or investor decks to tell the long-term financial story for your company. As a point of interest, you may also hear people refer to these as pro formas. Regardless, once we're done, this tool is yours to use. All right, let's dive in.
Okay, so the first thing we do, drive.google.com. We are going to open a new spreadsheet. We're going to rename it New Financial Model, name it whatever you want, and we'll get started. Okay, so the first thing I like to do when building a new spreadsheet, I like to come down a few rows and maybe walk in a column or so. Now let's go ahead and add some title information. And perhaps we'll add a subtitle. Okay, now let's go ahead and add some additional information. So let's add the years as well, starting in 2019. Now, as you recall from a previous chapter, we can do this quite easily using a formula and then simply dragging across. Okay, now let's start adding some of the pieces to our pro forma or our financial model. We'll start with revenue and maybe a couple sample revenue lines. And then we'll do a total revenue. Okay, next let's add our direct costs or our COGS line items. And then we'll add a total COGS. And then lastly, to complete our above the line information, let's go ahead and add gross profit and gross margin. Okay, and then before we get too far, let's go ahead and add all of the formulas for our above the line information. Let's start with all of our revenue formulas. We're going to use equals sum, and we want to add these two revenue lines. Then as we recall, we can actually just copy this formula across. We'll do the same thing for our cost of goods sold. And then we'll copy it across. And then lastly, gross profit and gross margin. Gross profit is simply the money that you brought in, which is revenue, minus what it cost you to produce the product or service that you sold, which is called direct costs. And gross margin is gross profit, but just represented as a % of revenue. So let's go ahead and add those using simple formulas. Equals revenue minus costs. And margin equals, or gross margin equals, gross profit divided by total revenue. And all we have to do, if we would like to copy them, is select them both and drag them across. Now there's one small mistake I made. You can see here I put this in the wrong row. All you can do is select it, find the hand icon, and just drag it down. You'll notice it leaves the formulas intact. Okay, so let's start working on our below the line expenses. Now these are broken into 3 categories: research and development, sales and marketing, and general and administrative. So let's go ahead and start entering that data now. Okay, so let's scroll down just a little bit and we'll start adding information starting with research and development. Then let's go ahead and add 2 lines or sublines under research and development, one for salaries and one for other expenses, and then a total. Now the cool thing here is we can actually duplicate this with just simple copy and paste. Let's do that twice. Paste and paste. And then we'll rename these for the other categories. Let's scroll down just a hair more. Then we'll add 2 total lines. Total operating expenses and net income, or EBITDA, also known as profit and loss. And finally, let's add all the formulas for our below the line expenses and of course our net income lines. So here is equals sum again, these two line items. And then to make things simple, we're just going to copy across. Now here's another trick. You can just simply copy this entire line and paste it here and paste it here. And if you double click in, you can actually see that it retained the formula and is adding now the appropriate two cells. Lastly, total operating expenses. We're going to use a simple formula for this as well. Equals this plus this plus this. You can see the formula here. Click enter and done. And then lastly, net income, which is all gross profit minus total operating expenses. And then simply select all that and copy that across as well. Done. And lastly, let's do some formatting. To get back to the top of the sheet, if you're on a Mac, hold down the Command key. If you're on a PC, it's the Control key, then left arrow and up arrow. Let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit so we can see the entire working area, and we'll get to formatting. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to do is change the entire spreadsheet's font to Times New Roman. So we click in this box over here in the top corner, drop down Times New Roman. The second thing I'd like to do is merge these cells and center them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge the cells using the merge button. I'm going to center it within the cell. And then what we'll do is we'll actually change the size. And this one I'd like to be a little bigger and bold. Okay, next let's go ahead and change all these fonts to bold. Resize the columns a little bit. I'm going to use automatic feature here, double click. And lastly, let's go ahead and change the years to centered, bold, and let's go ahead and kick it up one size. And now let's change how the numbers are represented within the cell. So let's go ahead and change the formatting there. This time I'm going to use the currency. And then for the percentage, of course, I like to use the percentage. And then we'll do the same thing down here to currency. Next, let's go ahead and add some sample data. We'll just make it look a little more real. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then I just want to go through it one more time and just make a cleanup pass on some of the row heights and column widths. So I'm going to select all these. I'm going to make those just a hair smaller. Okay, that looks pretty good there. Now we can zoom back in just a little bit. Let's go ahead and add one last design element. Let's just go ahead and add a little bit of fill. Use a light gray. And done.
As you can see, building a 5-year financial model can be done very quickly. As you're going to learn, however, the hard part about building the financial model is not the structure. The hard part is making sure that you've thought through every aspect of your business and that the data and the numbers that you put into your financial model are complete and realistic and attainable, and that at the end of the day, they all tie together. That logic and process is the goal of another class we teach titled Finance 102, Entrepreneurial Finance and Financial Modeling. You can check that course out on mentorboost.com. In the next chapter, we will continue to put Google Sheets through its paces, and we're going to build a more tactical tool this time, a monthly operating budget. Okay, we'll see you there.